The stadium lights washed the crowd in pulsating color when the giant screen suddenly locked onto a pair who did not expect global scrutiny. A tech CEO instinctively ducking like he'd been caught under a spotlight he never ordered, and the company's own people executive bringing a hand to her face as if she could press undo on reality. The music swelled. The front man tossed out a teasing line about either they're having an affair or they're just very shy, and a cheer rolled across the seats. In that instant, a private boundary cracked in public. What should have been a throwaway kiss cam gag detonated into a wildfire narrative. Alleged workplace entanglement, leadership hypocrisy, corporate damage control, and an internet rallying around a silent spouse who hadn't even left her living room. Viewers didn't just watch a moment, they adopted a storyline, one that kept mutating with each paused frame, each sleuth thread, each update post. And at the center of the emotional gravity was Megan, the wife abruptly repositioned from background supporter to symbol of betrayed loyalty. What unfolded next is less about two people on a stadium screen than about how digital crowds now script reputations in real time. Seconds after the camera locked on, body language became forensic evidence. His reflexive head dip behind a barrier looked like someone trying to fold himself out of existence, while her half-shielded face telegraphed a cocktail of shock and, "We just got caught." That 3-second choreography, awkward laughter, micro-panic, nervous glances, was replayed in slowed clips that fans exported, reframed, zoomed, and overlaid with captions. The crowd's roar gave the clip performative credibility. Thousands of in-person witnesses, plus millions of subsequent digital spectators. Stripped of context, the footage invited viewers to project, was this flirtatious discomfort? Guilt? Harmless coincidence? The lack of immediate clarification acted like oxygen. Every re-upload seeded fresh speculation. By the time the band hit the chorus, the footage had already hopped platforms, bouncing from one short-form feed to another, each caption escalating tone. CEO caught, HR boss hides, kiss cam disaster. A mundane entertainment feature had birthed a narrative embryo, and it was about to hatch into something far more combustible. Online sleuths pounced with a practiced efficiency that now resembles an informal profession. Frame grabs were brightness boosted to clarify jawlines and hairlines. Users cross-referenced conference photos, keynote screenshots, LinkedIn headshots, archived press releases, even caching services for pages that suddenly went dark. A thread would ask, "Is that Andy?" Another user responded with side-by-side composites and an annotated arrow pointing to identical collar stitching. Someone else unearthed a corporate blog post naming the HR executive seated adjacent at prior internal events. Within hours, the pair's titles, CEO and Chief People Officer, circulated as outraged bullet points. The phrase Coldplaygate began surfacing, a mimetic shorthand that upgraded the incident from curiosity to scandal. Each micro-discovery, a profile soft deleted, a comment section locked, a sudden silence from an otherwise active account, was framed as confirmation rather than coincidence, and woven through it all were protective posts about the unseen family. Imagine being the spouse reading this in real time. The investigation stage had ended. The prosecution phase, conducted by collective narrative momentum, was underway. But the corporate layer had not yet publicly cracked, and that tension primed viewers to stay. Companies script crisis responses, but social virality collapses their timelines. Initial internal steps, review, evaluation, leave pending investigation, were reported piecemeal, each phrase parsed like a leaked verdict. The shift from on leave to resignation landed with a thud that audiences interpreted as institutional concession. If leadership continuity breaks that quickly, something must be severe. Interim figures emerged, signaling a forced hand rather than a calm succession plan. Stakeholders outside the gossip sphere, customers, partners, employees with silent Slack windows, suddenly found themselves living inside a trending topic, and employees likely asked the unspoken question, if cultural guardians can't model boundaries, what does that say about our internal assurances? Communications emphasizing values and accountability attempted to reassert control, yet each formal statement felt reactive to an external courtroom governed by algorithmic amplification. Viewers lingered not just for salacious detail, but to witness the velocity with which a singular, off-duty misstep could rewrite an executive bio line. That velocity created narrative kinetic energy. If a resignation happened this fast, what other domino could still be wobbling? The most combustible accelerant was institutional irony. The chief people officer, tasked with safeguarding culture, vetting policies on workplace relationships, championing trust, now described as a participant in the very kind of entanglement policies are designed to filter. That role inversion sharpened public appetite. Hypocrisy is algorithmically potent. Commentators framed it as an ethics paradox. If the internal compliance shepherd is part of the controversy, then formal guidelines appear ornamental. The CEO, expected to embody strategic discipline, instead appeared physically evasive in the defining viral clip, a symbolic inversion of transparent leadership. Critics spun out mini essays about power asymmetry and organizational tone. If top leadership blurs boundaries, mid-level staff will doubt enforcement integrity. Even neutral observers were nudged toward moral judgment by the irresistible storytelling symmetry. The guardians of culture becoming the subjects of cultural scrutiny. And that irony cued the next emotional pivot. Audiences seeking a pure focal point for empathy. When digital outrage hunts villains, it simultaneously searches for a hero. Megan, previously peripheral to viewers, emerged as that empathic anchor. Her archived posts, family milestones, supportive captions, career praise, were screenshot as before panels in a narrative now delivering the after. Strangers poured affirmations into any accessible social channel, declarations that she deserved better, appeals for her to reclaim everything, hashtags forging a team identity around her first name. Observers noted subtle profile adjustments, a surname tweak here, a privacy tightening there, each action reframed as a measured reclamation of self rather than reactive impulsivity. The absence of a public rant paradoxically amplified respect. Silent composure read as strength. This emotional reframing shifted audience motivation. They weren't just doom-scrolling scandal, they were supporting resilience. That moral permission kept viewers invested without fatigue, because the core now felt less like voyeurism and more like digital solidarity. Yet attention economies rarely rest at empathy. They escalate into derivative content. As the foundational facts stabilized, derivative layers proliferated. Meme templates captioning the ducking motion, satirical HR training module mock-ups, parody merch proposals referencing a kiss cam freeze frame. Simultaneously, misinformation jets took off. Fabricated apology graphics borrowing corporate fonts, misattributed quotes, speculative timelines asserted as definitive. Users chasing novelty sometimes recycled unverified claims simply because newness outperformed nuance. Debunk threads tried to cauterize falsehoods, but corrections rarely matched the emotional dopamine of sensational expansions. The narrative now functioned like a self-feeding ecosystem. Memes reinforced visibility, visibility incentivized fresh spins. Fresh spins attracted new fact-checking cycles. Viewers who arrived late found a tangled collage of accurate updates, embellished commentary, and purely fictional leaks, all visually homogenized by similar fonts and screenshot aesthetics. This ambiguity didn't kill retention, it extended it, because audiences stayed to sort what's real from staged drama. And that prolonged engagement created runway for reputational freefall to crystallize. An executive brand is a composite of competence narratives, trust capital, and perceived values alignment. The viral moment punctured the trust component. Subsequent corporate moves signaled internal concern. The irony dimension corroded values alignment. Even absent formal legal or regulatory fallout, the perception architecture collapsed. Search queries attaching scandal, affair, concert to his name recalibrated first-page associations. Professional credibility, once anchored in investor decks and keynote quotes, now competed with reaction compilations and commentary breakdowns. The chief people officer's career prospects faced a parallel algorithmic verdict. Future boardrooms inevitably factor culture risk, and this incident minted a permanent digital file. Attempts at profile lockdowns or content scrubs inadvertently confirmed to skeptical audiences that there was something to hide. Nothing spreads faster than the sense of a cover-up, even when it is merely a privacy recalibration. The net result? a case study in how reputational asset depreciation can compress from quarters to days in a networked attention marketplace. Beneath the spectacle lurks a societal negotiation. Where's the line between accountability and collective overreach? One camp frames the saga as necessary exposure, arguing that power figures must model ethical consistency and that public scrutiny deters opaque misconduct. Another camp cautions against voyeuristic pylons, highlighting that families, especially children, become collateral observers to commentary they never consented to. The scandal also demonstrates a governance shift. External social audiences now function as informal auditors, accelerating internal reviews not by legal compulsion, but by reputational leverage. That dynamic raises uneasy questions. Do we want algorithmic heat to become a de facto compliance tool? Are empathy surges, for Meghan, sustainable or merely episodic catharsis for an audience that will pivot to the next trending fracture tomorrow? The narrative exposes a friction between two digital instincts: our drive to elevate a wronged figure and our appetite to sensationalize the wound itself. And that unresolved tension sets the stage for lingering curiosity about what structural changes, if any, will emerge after the noise fades. In a single jumbotron blink, a hierarchy inverted. An admired tech leadership duo recast as case subjects in ethics discourse. A private spouse transformed into a crowd-endorsed emblem of resilience, and a company forced into accelerated transparency choreography. The progression traced a predictable but still riveting arc: viral capture, collective identification, institutional response, irony amplification, empathetic anchoring, meme inflation, reputational depreciation, and philosophical debate over digital justice. Yet the final chapter is unwritten. Internal investigations may codify lessons into policy. Leadership reshuffles might attempt cultural reset signals. Meghan's path, whether toward quiet rebuilding, public advocacy, or complete withdrawal, will influence how the story's emotional residue settles. For viewers, the scandal offers a mirror. Are we amplifying accountability, or are we indulging in rupture theater? The answer probably lives in the gray. And that gray is why people kept watching long after the music faded. Drop your take. What part of this chain felt justified? And where did the crowd cross from principled scrutiny into spectacle? And if you stayed to the end, you've already proven how potent a few unscripted seconds can be in an age where narrative acceleration is the story.